Hello, everyone. Welcome back to PopCultX, episode 106, your go-to for all things pop culture from a Gen X or expanded version of pop culture, or like I like to say, pop culture to the power of X. So, as you can see, Gabe is not here tonight. He's out celebrating his husband Doug's birthday. So, shout out to Doug. Happy birthday, Doug. Hope you're having a wonderful evening. But stepping in and joining us once again after a 2-year hiatus, we have Shannon Callahan. So welcome, Shannon. Welcome back to PopCultX.
Thank you for having me back. I'm thrilled.
Yes, and last time we sat down with you, we talked about women in music production, especially on the producer side of things.
Yeah.
So I know your career path and where you've going recently has even veered more towards that. Is that correct? Would you say?
Right. Yeah. In various ways. Because not only have we been just writing more, as you know, we teamed up with Eric, writer, filmmaker Eric Shapiro, and we are also producing films with him. So we got a lot in the works. Yeah, at that time we were like, I started stepping away from like some of the live music and was just kind of focused just exclusively on work in the studio. And funny enough, we're actually circling back to playing live again.
Why not?
Which that was a huge gap where like I had totally stepped out of that scene. I was like, I'm only writing and producing, which that is the case. That is the path. But it's just kind of funny how like you still can't predict all the time, like what's going to pop up on your path.
Right.
And it's like, okay.
Very true. Now, for those of you who don't know, a couple weeks ago, we interviewed Jaime, which is Shannon's partner at Planet Mischief, about his musical career and his musical journey and his composing career and what they're doing there. And Eric, who Shannon mentioned, we also interviewed him about a month or so ago about his filmmaking career. So if you guys want to go watch those, learn more about those two gentlemen, feel free. They're a couple episodes ago, but right now, I guess, so live music. I was going to ask you if you missed it, but I guess since you're doing it again, it's kind of a moot point.
Well, it's not an obvious answer because I went through like kind of a lot with that because around like the end of last year, like it was just taking a huge toll on my body.
Oh, I can imagine.
Sick. And I was like, getting kind of frustrated because we were canceling shows. And I was like, we cannot go on like this. This isn't okay. Like, I'm not okay. And so taking like a substantial amount of time, like really just allowed me to kind of focus inward. Turns out like I really needed that journey, and my body like went through a great amount of healing and really good things. And I wouldn't say I was like dying to get back into live music, but I did miss singing, like the performing aspect of singing. Like I didn't really miss a lot because I had the 2 bands going at the time. I had my band Blood Cells, and then we had our Anthrax tribute band Medusa. And I think it's just too much, especially with Blood Cells, doing a lot of the writing and playing. It was like just a lot to like mentally handle. And then physically, it's like a lot of equipment. It's a lot of stuff. And so I think taking a full step back, going totally kind of in an off balance way allowed me to go, okay, I think I know where balance might be now. And cool. It's maybe like minimal on the performing so I can still like enjoy it. And it can be a cool outlet, especially because like gigs pop up for Medusa. So it's like, obviously, people still want to see this band and I still want to perform in it. So I had like a bittersweet thing, and I kind of rekindled a little bit of a desire and love to get back on stage. It just kind of made sense. So I had to.
That is cool because I've heard your music and your voice. You're such a great singer. So I'm glad that you're not denying your fans that. So
thank you. Well, I think it's funny because I had tried to retire from the stage before because like people don't realize like I've been performing since I was 5 years old. It has been a lifetime of performing. I didn't just like step onto the scene and go, oh, I'm tired. I've had enough. Like it's been a long journey, you know? But I don't know. I think I lost my train of thought.
Well, I mean, it is a long journey. Yes, I can imagine if you've been, I guess, in the forefront since you were 5. Yeah, it's like, I mean, I would know. I would want to be like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go off stage for a bit, get out of the
No,
limelight.
because sometimes yeah, because sometimes you realize, like, am I doing it for me anymore? And then, so kind of finding that balance of like, okay, there were times
Mm,
like, yeah, so I tried to retire once before and I kind of came back because it was like, people were like, oh, that's a bummer, you know, really wish you were performing again. And it was like, that kind of made me feel like, oh, I want to get back on stage. But that's not always the right reason. Like, you have
yeah.
to, it has to be right for you in all aspects. So it has to be healthy, like, you know, so.
And it seems like you said you rekindled that passion for it. So it seems like you found that balance where live shows every now and then are good for your soul. So
Right, right. Not like a full blown like live performing schedule, but yeah,
hmm
still being able to have that while still, you know, being in the studio. Cause I don't know if you know this about me, but I can be such a hermit in the studio. Like I get really like reclusive. I don't know if that's always so healthy. It's like it's great on one end, but like I think I'm antisocial sometimes because of it. So like that's why like being quiet, I'm like, wow, I haven't been on like a podcast or interview in so long. Like
Well, I mean, I get that sometimes I don't want to be around people either. So it's like I'll just hang out at my computer. They won't talk
yeah,
back to me.
yeah, yeah, for
Well,
sure.
so on the production sides of things for you, you have your music production and now you're stepping into film production. Are those widely different as I imagine, or do they share a lot of common things?
The stuff that we're doing, like with Eric, I mean, it's definitely with each short we've done
hmm
has presented a completely different like set of criteria because it's like each one's so different. So each one like calls for a different style, approach, and whatnot. And so that's definitely different because like until now, I'll write whatever I want whenever I want. Like just,
Right.
you know, it's truly self motivated and self driven. And then when you're like scoring film, yeah, you're really like, okay, let me get in the head of the writer. Let me get into these
Mm-hmm.
like the emotions of these actors and let me try to get into the spaces like in between this story and create this new emotion. So yeah, with each one it's like a little scary because there's that new challenge of am I gonna is the sound and the pic is it all gonna marry, is it gonna
hmm
be
hmm
what the vision was, and then that's the beautiful thing of like being a musician songwriter, like it's kind of like overcoming those things, working through them and finding, ooh, I love what I did. And like, okay, like everyone's happy. Okay, I learned this new thing too. And like, it's cool because you get this forward momentum feeling with
Yeah.
each one. I feel like picking up new skills. So yeah, it's totally different in that sense. We've been doing the shorts and then as you know, like we have the feature. So
hmm
like I haven't worked on that yet. They're not it's still
In the
writing
form of,
and
yeah.
shooting and stuff. So yeah. But yeah, it's totally different. It's really fun.
That's exciting. I mean, I always, until recently, I never really. I mean, I know John Williams and the major composer like that, but
Mm.
until recently, I haven't really paid much attention to what the music and how much it adds to it adds another dimension
Yeah,
to the films. So, I mean,
totally.
just it's just so much more. I mean, just like I think of like what's the movie by Christopher Nolan, Dunkirk, and just like the score and
Was
just
it
some of the
like
sounds.
memorable?
Yeah, it's just some of the sounds, and also there's another movie where I think it All Quiet on the Western Front that was like, nominated for the Academy Award, and it was a lot of repetitive sounds, but kind of like in a Jaws moment when you heard those sounds appear on screen, oh, something's coming, some
Yeah,
memorable moment, and so I can imagine when
right.
you're creating that you're like, ooh, I got to add this in. So how must that feel for you to just be able to create those moments for people to watch?
Oh, well, I like kind of describe it as like my goal is to 100% like I'll say Eric, because he's who I'm working with right now.
Mm-hmm.
I want to 100% get in his head and satisfy his needs. And I want to 100% also like intuitively dig in and just do what I feel like I need to do. So I want to like 100% do both of those. And so far, like that's gone well. So, yeah, it's really interesting because it's sometimes it's just like watching the same little thing over and over. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I think I know what where in my virtual instrument library I might gravitate towards. Because it's like, I found there was a phenomenon that when I feel aligned to a project, I have a very easy time finding sounds and working with sounds. Like there's something kind of magical about that. And it's like, how did I find that obscure sound that I wanted in this vast library? And so there's something kind of nice about when you're like aligned with it.
Yeah.
When because it's like, and Eric also gives like that freedom to be like, please do like your thing as well. Like, here's what I want, but like, it's open to, our side.
Well, he trusts you as an artist, and that trust from the filmmaker must be really nice. Yeah.
It definitely creates a nice like foundation there. Like there's a really like great feeling, I think, like among us to creatively build something together, which is very beautiful. That's like, you can only like dream of that kind of relationship. Like you think of like composer, filmmakers, like who have that. And it's like, wow, that would be the goal.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, we've been talking to a lot of comic book writers and artists recently. And so I always ask them, how is it working with the rest of your team? Because it really is like a team effort to build like a comic book, the art, the writing. So I can just imagine the same holds true in your space with the music and the filmmaking, that it all has to come together and be cohesive to create the overall vision what the director or the auteur wanted.
Right. I think like what we're doing like in this situation, because it's not a huge crew, it's not like not a lot of people involved. Eric's doing a lot of roles on his end. And then on our end, it's Jaime and me. So like if it's the composing or the sound design, whatever, like, and now we're going to start getting into a little more design stuff. I kind of want to start tinkering around with some like kitchen stuff, make some little weird instrument, just have fun. But yeah, it's not a lot of people on the team. So we're really like, okay, everyone has to be, and then there's this RJ is involved. I mean, we just all have to be on point. We have to be like, okay, here's the time frame, here's the project, and just put forth your best work. And so, yeah, if it's like not like that, it won't work on a small team like this, because we're taking on more roles, especially Eric, a whole bunch of things. Acting.
There. So you said sound design. So I should introduce you to someone I interviewed on the show called Fred. His name is Fred Greenhall. He's a audio engineer, like the lead audio engineer for like Realm Media, which to do a lot of audio podcast stories. And his favorite thing is doing what you said in the kitchen, making sound design, making things, the Foley type stuff. So
yeah. And I was laughing because you're getting like my half of a studio, half of a kitchen view. But I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, I love that. Like I have the kitchen right here because there's so many things I can like just tinker around with. And I totally like that's going to happen. That's
fun stuff. That's really fun stuff.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Well, it was cool catching up with you and what your career is going. And I'm very excited to see and hear what transpires next. But, we are a pop culture podcast YouTube show. So let's talk a little bit about pop culture. Let's see. What are you currently, is there anything you're currently watching or reading that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Watching? Well, when it comes to TV, I'm like, I can be a little bit of a TV junkie, but in like a weird way. Like I don't watch a lot of TV. Like I only watch like when I'm like at night going to bed, but I would call my, like the way I feel about TV, like I'm obsessed and I like garbage humor. So like my shows are like Rick and Morty, The League, Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like that's me. And I watch a lot of like other great shows. I would call The Good Place like the best show on TV. I watched it like 5 times. Everything I love, I watch through like 5 times. So you're more likely to find me rewatching the same shows over and over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reading, I'm always kind of reading, like, I'm always kind of picking up the Bhagavad Gita. I'm always kind of picking up like things on meditation,
nice,
Buddhism, yoga. That's kind of like typically what I'm reading if it's not like music stuff related. I haven't really gotten into like a good fiction like novel in a while. So I like can't commit, even though I like to like read. It's just like little things.
That's
I can't
interesting.
Like commit. Yeah.
So you're reading all these deep philosophical books, but then like you get your release through the garbage TV, as you called it. So,
yeah,
that's a good
like,
balance.
I'm all like deep philosophical, like transcendental reading, and then I go watch stand-up comedy, like just vulgar. Yeah. That's me in a nutshell. That sounds right.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
There's a show on Hulu called Extraordinary that I was introduced to by a former guest, and it's about a group of people. Actually, everyone in England, I don't know if it's England or worldwide, they have superpowers, except for one person. And the show centers around the one person who doesn't have powers and how she navigates that. Yeah, exactly. So it's quite interesting. I highly recommend it if you want a good laugh. It has the humor of like The League and whatnot. So I think you might like that one.
Oh, excellent. I'm totally like, I could use a new show right now. So that's great.
Cool. So I also had this question. So on Twitter, there was a thread or I don't know what you call it when like people like retweet, quote tweet, just goes on and on and on. But the question was, what 4 movies define your childhood? So I thought that was very interesting. So I gave it some thought to me. So I thought maybe we could go back and forth, and like I'll say one of mine, and you can say one of yours, and we can comment on them back and forth. So
let's do it.
So like the first one for me is the shirt I'm wearing. It was Star Wars, because that was like the movie that I really remember a lot. My mom always tells me, "Oh yeah, we took you when you were 6 weeks old to go watch the movie in the theater." So I was like one of the youngest people in there. I don't remember it, but. And then watching it since then, I've rewatched it numerous times and everything that goes along. So that's probably my first movie when I always think of movies from my childhood is Star Wars.
Okay. And like, how do you feel about the whole series? Or is this specific to?
I enjoy them all. I'm not the kind of person who's going to be like, oh, I hate that, I'm never going to watch it. I mean, anything that gives you the content within that universe that you enjoy. Yeah. Why not savor it? Why be someone who's like, ooh, that they can't do that. That's terrible. Just enjoy everything. Just relish in the fact that it's there. That's my mindset on that stuff.
I always wonder because so much stuff comes out Star Wars related, and I'm not actually that into it. So I don't really keep up or know. Like people ask, like if I watch The Mandalorian, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what that means.
Like the Mandal, what?
Like, I don't know. But I always wonder, like, is there a point that people are like, this isn't really like the feel, the vibe we're used to? Or is it, like anything Star Wars?
I see what you mean. Yeah. I think anything Star Wars is good for me. Okay. I mean, some of the shows, the storytelling was like, well, this is kind of weird. But The Mandalorian, I think, if you think about what Star Wars is, it's a space cowboy in a way, right? And so The Mandalorian, you brought that up, that show, I think, really hit on that. And it really was like Pedro Pascal, the Mandalorian character, was really like this lone cowboy and how he found his other Mandalorian people, and he found like his tribe, so to speak, and he found his people and who he belongs with. So he went from being a person bounty hunter on his own to now being a part of a collective and a bigger group and working towards the greater goal of his people.
That's cool.
Yeah, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that.
How about yourself? What's a movie that defined your childhood?
Oh, like the first that comes to mind, definitely Fight Club.
Interesting.
That's my movie.
How old do you think you were when the first time you saw that?
I would say maybe like 14, 15.
Okay. Now, did you understand the social ramifications of it at that time?
Well, I've always been like kind of I've always enjoyed, getting into complex stuff. So for me, it was like, oh my God, this is the movie I needed. Like, you know what I mean? Like I needed it in my life. And I think I've been analyzing it from that moment till now because, like things have changed. I now have a total actually different perspective on it after now having spent massive amounts of time in meditation.
Okay.
Different analysis. And that movie is just so great because you can totally do that with it. You can have assessment of it and then like strip layers and just have fun. And it's so dark and it's so like you go in your own mind and really think like, I don't know, it just digs up some stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah. I remember the first time I watched it. Oh, I don't remember how old I was, but I remember that I just took it at face value. I didn't really think about the deeper meanings of it. And it was like, it was a cool movie. I mean, the guy's beating up himself, but that was pretty cool in a way, you know.
But, it's at the least cool. If you don't understand anything, it's at least rad, like a rad, cool looking, dark, grainy green movie. I love it so much.
Very true. It is. It really is.
Yeah.
Another one for me, and now this I just watched recently again for the first time in probably 20 years, was the movie The Goonies.
Oh, I haven't seen that in so long.
It was such a fun movie. I can't believe, I guess I grew up watching that several times. I mean, and it had so many great actors in it. And I guess people always compared me to Sean Astin as I grew up. He's like, oh, you look like Rudy. You look like, Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings. I was like, no, I don't. But
funny. I don't know if I ever would have thought that, but maybe I'll see it now.
Maybe. So when I watched it again, I was like, oh yeah, that's the guy who he just won the Academy Award. So seeing, what's his name? Guy, I can't think of his name. Anyways, the guy who won the Best Supporting Actor for the Academy Award recently. I'm sorry, Tae-Wah Coyne. I can't pronounce his name right. Never have been able to. But seeing him as a kid and seeing him there, and it's like, wow. It's just to imagine if he knew the future at that moment that he was going to grow up 30 years later and be able to win the Academy Award for another performance. It's just, I don't know. It was just kind of mind blowing for me.
That's always fun. Like when you watch other like old movies and sometimes like an actor that became very well established with awards, they have like a small role or like just some like whatever role. And you're like, hey, that's, whoever. And I love that. Like, I kind of love piecing together people's journeys. And I'm always like that nerd who like every time I'm watching something, I'm like, oh, let's IMDb them or let's look let's find out everything they did. And then I sit there half watching, half making connections, and I get all excited. And I feel like I'm like an official researcher, like when I'm doing it.
I laugh because I do the same thing. I'm like, who is that? And I get to my phone, look it up. Oh, he's in that one. Oh, wait, he was in that other movie. And I'm just go down that rabbit hole. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
It's fun, especially when you see like a few people from one movie or show, also like all of them in another. And I go like, okay, what's going on here? Who directed? Like, I want to know how did this group, like, or couple actors that I'll see together. I get like very excited about that for some reason.
I mean, so that happens a lot, especially, and it came up recently when Gabe and I were chatting about that. Like Adam Sandler does it with a lot of his friends. Quentin Tarantino does it. James Gunn does it with like his wife. And but these directors and filmmakers, they want to work with their friends and they want to work with people who they know they can get the results with. So like, I don't blame them. I think it's a great idea. I mean, Martin Scorsese does it. And so
it's fun.
It is fun. I mean,
fun to find out like, oh, that's a unit. Actually, I was going to ask you because you said like not really like always noticing the score or like the composers, like if you were into Lost or Fringe at all.
I never watched Lost, and I'm not sure what Fringe is, so I guess not.
Fringe is amazing.
Okay.
But like those were both J.J. Abrams with the composer Michael Giacchino.
Michael Giacchino is awesome. Yes.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
Hmm.
So you know, I was gonna
Yes.
say he's my favorite right now for sure.
Yeah, he is fantastic. I think he did he do the Batman recently, right? The movie The Batman?
Think so. Yeah, I haven't like seen like a lot of movies
Well,
like sad.
IMDb is right here, right? But yeah, he is fantastic. I
Yeah.
know he also directed a Marvel short film for Disney Plus recently, the Werewolf at Night, I think it's called. So,
Oh,
so he's also exploring from being a composer now also a film director. So I'm
that's
excited to see
really
what he does next. Yeah, he's great. He
yeah,
really is.
yeah, yeah, totally.
What's another movie that maybe you enjoyed a lot during your formative ages?
I was gonna say one, but now I'm gonna say another one, and that's
Uh-oh.
Death Becomes Her.
Yes. That's
um, I saw something like there was like a film festival like screening it or something was happening recently, and like I was
hmm.
so mad I couldn't go.
Oh no.
That movie so much. Like that was such a like the wit
Hmm.
involved and it was so witty and dark and like I just loved it on so many levels. That was definitely a movie I think about when I think about my childhood. I think about that movie and I think, wow, no one really talks about how great that movie was. And like you like I kind of almost forgot about it for a long time. And so yeah, like asking about the movies, I'm like, Death Becomes Her. Like that's I gotta give it some love right now. Like it deserves to be highlighted.
You're absolutely correct. That was a great movie. I think I just watched it a couple weeks ago and it holds
Oh
up.
shit.
It really holds up. It's such a
Yes.
fantastic film. Bruce Willis,
Obscure.
Goldie
Yes.
Hawn. It's just
Amazing performances. Like, yeah, Bruce Willis gives a performance like you don't expect.
mhm.
Like, I just think yeah, that's a wicked good movie. So, like, yeah, gory in its own way and funny and light in its own way. And I love it.
Absolutely. It is
Yeah.
really great. Yeah. That's a good
It's like,
addition.
it's a good, like, catty women's, like but just done in a great way. And they end up like best friends, frenemies forever.
They do, right? They end up linked forever. Yep. Until, well,
Yep,
they fall
yep.
apart at the end. Yeah. But
I always thought, man, that's cool. You're gonna have to
yeah.
do something for that's cool.
That
Like I
is
love when they
cool.
fall down, they're all broken. They're like, ah, shit. Like just ends so
Absolutely.
ridiculous.
They're at his funeral and they're laughing in the background. Yeah,
Oh my God.
that is
You know
such a
what?
great movie.
Connect to that even more so because I can't be at weddings or funerals because I have an uncontrollable like problem with my laughter. And
Oh.
I'm like super triggered by those. Those are two scenarios I'm aware of. And I just like, I remember like seeing that movie and being like, oh my God, that would be me too. Like I'd be with
Just laughing.
them. Oh my
That's
God. Yeah. But what's yours?
another one. This wasn't on my initial list, but just thinking back, it's a movie that my sisters used to watch all the time. So of course I'd watch it too. And that's the movie Splash. Daryl Hannah, Tom Hanks. Daryl Hannah plays a mermaid. She comes out of water, fish out of water type story, and Tom
Oh,
Hanks basically remembers her. I guess she saved his life as a child or something like that. It's such a great movie. John Candy's in it. It's so cool. It's such a fun story, and I think probably watched that because of my sisters. And I
yeah.
do mean that it was because of them. It wasn't like I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
So many times. I mean,
That's fun.
every day probably, and it's such a great
Really?
movie. Yeah,
I've
yeah.
never seen it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, it sucks because like when anyone and I was just talking about this with Eric because I'm like, this is super embarrassing. Like people like talk about movies and I'm like, I've never seen that. Like I always feel like that's my answer. I'm like, oh man, I never saw that movie. And then I have this like disorder or something where I'll say that and then like someone will be like, Shannon, you saw that movie with me. And I'm like, oh brother, like I have like movie amnesia or something like, and I just always feel like haven't seen all the classics.
Hmm.
I should just like make it a goal because I feel like I've heard of that movie. That's like one of those movies, like, and then all those like Steve Martin movies,
Mm-hmm.
all the Tom Hanks movies. I've seen some Tom Hanks movies.
Well, I mean,
They're
I
fun.
guess it's
They're fun.
have a little movie marathon one night and
Yeah,
just put on some old movies
exactly.
and that way you can see people, I watched it.
I know. I know. I feel like I always gravitate towards, gruesome stuff.
Okay. Let's say what would be like your favorite gory or horror movie if you're leaning towards that? I know
Well,
there's a lot of movies out there that fall into that. So,
American Psycho would be like definitely one of my favorite movies. Watched it a ton growing up. I don't know if it's a psychological like thriller. I don't know if that would be like horror. Oh, I know what my favorite horror movie is though. And it's just like kind of dorky actually.
okay.
But House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob Zombie.
Okay. And I can see, I'll be you right now. I've never seen both. I haven't seen either of those movies.
Okay.
So,
I'm shocked about American Psycho though.
yeah, it's one of those movies that I see, as I'm going through streamers. Oh, American Psycho. I should probably watch that someday.
Yeah, it's good.
I'll go put Star Wars back on or something.
Yeah, I know it needs to be in the comfort zone because, like you said, you want to be in like the universe that you're where you're used to the characters and stuff. And yeah, it's like not always appealing to put on something random. You're like, I'm not in the mood to find out this other thing right now. I know I get really moody about it, but American Psycho is really cool. Like it's just just another one, kind of like a Fight Club in that it's just a total mental thing. And again, it's another one of those that I just keep having fun thinking about over time. But Christian Bale's performance, it's so good. And the movie is like, it takes place in the 80s and he's like this, like, I remember correctly, like a Wall Street.
Like a Wall Street broker or something, right?
Yeah. And like, it's just so the way they depicted it is just like very edgy and funny and kind of ridiculous. But like, he has got this, like, because I also read the book. Of both Fight Club and American Psycho, actually. And he has this like obsession with music. And so he goes from like these murderous like thoughts and planning and all this weird shit to like popping on like Huey Lewis in the News and like analyzing it. Like he gets so excited. He like the way he talks about it, like, you know what I mean? He starts analyzing the music and you're like, he's about to murder. In the book, which I think is really interesting, because I think they did a great job book to movie, but like in the book, they'll go on for pages with that of his rambling and like he'll get so into this pop culture. He goes so into it that it's like you kind of forget what book you're reading. You're just on his like stream of consciousness about pop songs and
interesting. I might have to read the book.
The book, amazing book.
I'll make a note. Yeah, I'm gonna have to read that book. Sounds great.
Yeah, with both of those, Fight Club and American Psycho, I feel like I don't know book or movie. It's like that's hard to say which is better. They're both brilliant and so well, like transposed. What's the word?
Yeah, I got you. I know what you mean. They're real.
I only think of the word transposed. Yeah, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's interesting. And sometimes it's not always the case, right? Sometimes the movie doesn't do the book justice. So I'm glad to hear that in this case. I haven't read Fight Club. I've read other books by the author, but I haven't read Fight Club.
Cool.
But
what else has he written?
I think there's a book called Survivor. It's about a plane crash, and there's like one survivor, and he goes through this whole like survivor's remorse, type guilty thing. So that was interesting. There's a few other books. I have to look them up. I don't know offhand.
Cool. Yeah, I only read that one. I was always curious.
Yeah, it's
other ones were,
they're interesting. I mean, he is a very distinct author, and he is a very way of putting things. So yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, the final movie that really defined my childhood, and I say this one for the end because I always wanted to be one, was a Ghostbuster.
Oh,
Ghostbusters. I mean,
love that
it's
movie.
from the catchy songs to
Totally.
the ghosts, fighting them. It's just Slimer. It was just so much fun, and I really, I
Yes.
guess all my movies are like from the '80s because that's when I was like in my youth. I guess I would say. Ask me what movies I watched as a teenager. That might be a different story, but yeah. So Ghostbusters, really fun.
I was grouping my teen years in with childhood, but
Okay, I could do
I
that.
really don't think of any movies in my for my childhood. So
Fair enough.
yeah, as far as like imprinting on me like that,
Hmm.
yeah. But I loved Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
That movie is so good. Yeah, we sing that Herbie Hancock song around here a lot. Like that happens. There's a lot of yeah, breaking out into dance and singing and beatboxing, and that occurs frequently.
Hey, that's a good way to pass the time. Why not?
Hell yeah.
So, what's a final movie from you, Shannon? What's the final one on your list, or for this purpose right here that you could throw out?
Okay. Well, I would say Office Space was a
My
big one.
stapler. Hmm.
That was a big one for me.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
I saw that movie at a time like where I guess I didn't have the sense of humor. I was finding my sense of humor.
okay.
And I just like at first the movie made me feel really irritated. And I must have been going through a very literal phase. I don't know what I like. I remember I was very like moody at the time, but like, I remember I saw that movie and I was just like, this is weird, or whatever. And then
Hmm.
by the second time, because for whatever reason I watched it again, like pulled towards it again. By the second time, like I felt like this is my sense of humor. Like
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
this is me. So I think I was just going through I don't understand these new silly feelings, and I'm like, oh, I'm a very silly person. And like, I just the sarcastic stuff and that, just hits home for me. And then like that movie's just so great.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I mean,
So
I
fun.
remember after working in an office environment for a while,
Mhm.
that movie hit so much differently. And, especially the scene with they're breaking apart the printer that never worked. And I feel their pain there. And,
That
it's
was
just,
before I entered that environment. So I feel like I don't know why, but like I feel like I then entered that environment for several years, very corporate,
mhm.
um, after high school. And then I felt like, wow, I understand. Like to this day, I'm like,
Yeah,
why do I have to hear the same thing from three people? Like if
exactly.
like I got the memo.
Yeah. And Ron Livingston, who plays the main actor in the movie, he's such a fantastic actor. There's another show
Oh.
that he's on called Louder Milk. I'm not sure if you've seen that one.
No, I wasn't sure if he was still acting anymore.
He is. He's been in smaller roles in different places, but he stars in a show by the Farrelly brothers called Louder Milk, and highly recommend that one as well. It has that same
Okay.
dark comedy feel of Office Space in it,
Okay.
and so if you liked Office Space, you'll like that. And I love the Farrelly brothers; they're so
What
great.
else did they do? Because that sounds familiar to me.
Farrelly Brothers are Dumb and Dumber, Me, Myself, and Irene.
Oh, okay.
A lot of those type of movies, but the greatness about them is their inclusivity. So they don't exclude people because they don't fit within a certain mold of what like Hollywood says. Like their most
Yeah.
recent movie by one of the brothers is called Champions. It's out now. I think it's with Woody Harrelson, and he plays a basketball coach for adult. Um, what's the right appropriate way? Adult disabled. Not mentally, but intellectually disabled. So some have Down syndrome, and others have different handicaps, and they bring in those actors to portray that role. So I thought that was really cool because they always include those people, and it makes it feel like, movie and storytelling is really for everyone. So it's really cool.
Well, and I know that like people, they feel a certain way sometimes when they feel like, well, if, this role was written into this movie, why is someone so wildly, and I kind of understand because it's acting.
Yeah.
Everyone's acting and playing a role, but it is interesting to make that kind of like, it sounds like they make that like, that's an important part.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And
that's really interesting. That's really
they make that choice. And I think and you'll even see it if you go watch Loudermilk. You'll see some of the characters in there who fit that mold and outside of what Hollywood says you have to look like or have to be like. So they include those. So it's really great.
Like breaks that barrier between like a real setting versus like, that like perfect.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That Hollywood, like the way things look, and it's not always like so true. So I dig that because I do welcome more of that, like in advertising and things.
Yes, very true. Yeah, I see like a Target ad, and you see someone in a wheelchair in a Target ad. I mean, I think back to a couple of years ago, you would never see that.
There was a gap. My son and I walked by a store, and the ad was like the little boy didn't have a leg. It was like a prosthetic. I'm sorry, I don't know the right words for things, but
that's right.
But I know my son like and the kid was like had this huge smile, and the way like my son kind of reacted was like he was like, "Wow, that's amazing." So it had this like inspirational impact, like. I was just like, oh, cool. And we stopped and looked at it for a while.
That's cool. That is really cool.
Messaging of, hey, they're like, this is another person. Like,
exactly.
This is how a lot of people live and do amazing things. And we don't have to be like, oh, they're disabled.
Exactly. That's exactly correct.
Sweet. Special.
That is... That's really cool. I mean, I've seen that a lot more recently, and I'm glad advertisers are finally waking up to that fact that, people are people, no matter however able they are.
Yeah.
And I guess seeing, if I'm a kid who, for whatever reason, has a prosthetic, and all I see on ads are normal, healthy kids with two legs, and maybe you feel excluded. But then to see what you said at the Gap, you see that there, and you're like, wow. That's me. I can,
I see me in the environment. Yeah. I see me in society. Like, I'm not excluded. Yeah. I mean, I just think of like messaging has always been like really messed up for girls, growing up. Remember growing up with all the magazines around the house, Cosmopolitan, all that stuff. And it's just like, this is how some women look.
Yeah.
Not all fake or whatever. Like this is truly how some incredible looking people look, but like it's not how all people look, and it shouldn't be the one thing like that like girls coming up aspire to look like, because we all have different bodies, and like it's I just so against that, like that messaging that you have to look one way and be one way. And I'm glad people are like not conforming so much, even though there's always like, people modifying themselves to look like celebrities. They're still that.
Right.
Like, I mean, I say, look how you want to look, be how you are. And it is nice to have that role model out there.
That holds true even for like adult males like me. So we're not all going to be Abercrombie and Fitch models. We're not all going to be, we're not all going to have six-pack abs. And that's all at least for me, what I see when I see advertising for different clothes or anything, that's what we saw.
Yeah.
And so it's
true.
It's like, ooh, I feel bad about myself because I don't fit in that mold. I'm never going to look like that. But that's changed recently. Now there's more people who are normal sized, I guess you would say.
Variety. Some variety. Because I think of like kids in high school who grapple with just already so much.
Yeah.
And then if they think like, because I just remember having a hard time, and like, if you think like, oh, I have to be this way and no one's going to like me or whatever. And then you kind of get out in the world and you realize like people like all sorts of like that like you find that like variation is welcomed more.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
not everyone, it's not because I don't know, when I went to high school, it's just very Barbie Ken high school. But at first it was at Los Alamitos High School. And I remember like the experience there being different than when I was at the arts high school.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
It was like, I think we talked about this, like kind of like it reminded me of like Fame, like the movie. You remember?
I think so, yeah.
And I love that. So I feel like I saw both sides of it where, I have the magazines and that kind of message, but then also the free spirited and more creative upbringing from art schools where it is more like, and not just that, it's like welcoming all of your skills. Cause it was like, you're dancing, you're playing music, you're doing all these things. And the school accommodates that. So I think already like that kind of environment like helped me. I deem myself like, like I'm not just like, I feel like I'm a lot of things,
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah. I went to school for creative and performing arts. It wasn't just that, it was a normal high school, but there was a section for the performing arts. And I think being around that and in that, it does make you a more, I don't want to say well-rounded person, but it does allow you to be, I think it opens your eyes to more items than just, if you didn't have that. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I find that experience like very valuable, especially because like sometimes like the way the arts are viewed, it's not at the same level as like, it's like, go be a doctor, go be a lawyer, and it's like sometimes with like creative stuff and the arts, it's just not as much emphasis put on it. So that's another like component of these schools too. It's like valuing that we don't all do one job. We don't all do one thing. We all have different things to offer, and like really nurturing that. Because I think like that was such a big part of my life, and an obvious trajectory.
And it still is. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like, I was like primed for this, but it's just like, not everyone gets that, and it's like, and to have like stuff being shunned, it's just like, yeah.
I hear you. Well, we were just supposed to talk about pop culture, but we got a little deeper than that here in this episode. So I think that's really great. I want to just go ahead and say thank you for spending some time with me today. I know probably went over a little longer than what we had maybe envisioned, but it was such great catching up with you, Shannon. Thank you so much. Now, if people want to go follow your journey, where's the best place where they can go follow you on social media? I
think the best way to follow me is just by looking up Planet Mischief. Planet Mischief. We're on Instagram, YouTube, and then from there you can find me and all of our other projects. I think that's like the best place to follow like the music, all the film stuff, all the projects. It's kind of, that's the hub of it all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And one final thing, for those kids or high school kids who maybe are in the thick of it right now and in that formative years, what's maybe one piece of advice you could give to them? Maybe one little nugget, I guess.
Well, I think like when you're in adolescence, I think everything can feel like the end of the world sometimes, and everything always feels so important. Like labels feel like you have to label things, and everything feels so like heavy and important. And it's kind of like, you know what, you can kind of rise above that and just get through those times. It's not all gonna be like high school. Like that is a special situation. And I think adolescents kind of have a rough time maybe thinking that's how the world might be, or, the troubles that they face in those situations define them or whatever. And it's like, you kind of need to find what makes you tick, no pressure. No, but like just kind of listen to yourself really listen to yourself, because I think like the biggest thing later on, you won't regret putting in like time towards the thing you love, but you will probably regret ditching those things for parties and friends, people that ended up not really being your friend. And there's so much emphasis on like all these relationships and things. And it's like, just think about you and like, and kind of like your well-being through all that. It's very important. It can be overlooked, I think.
Very true. Very wise words, Shannon. Very wise words. So everyone out there, go to planetmischief.com. Go follow them on Instagram, on Twitter, or Facebook. Find them, follow their journey, look for their upcoming musical scores. And once again, Shannon, thanks for stepping in. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Danny.